Croeso nôl to Fearless in Devotion, the Wrexham AFC podcast, sponsored by the Fat Boar Bar and Restaurant. Well, where to start after yesterday's game? Andy, you're too hungover to come. First of all, Tim, why don't you tell us?
I'm not hungover. I've not even
What?
had a drink.
Oh no, sorry, mate. Yeah, just
It's just a default.
We've literally just been through a character assassination from Mike Hughes. He's put a comment on YouTube on the last video about Andy, so he's very, very sensitive. I can guarantee that Gilpin is definitely not hungover today. Look at his sprightly eyes, for God's sake.
I'm ready to. I could run a bloody marathon.
Well, don't do that. Instead, Tim, tell us what you thought of yesterday's game.
It was absolutely insane. At half time, 4-1 down, I had to go. It takes something special for me to leave my seat for that 15-minute slot. So I literally went down to the concourse because I need to clear my head, kind of reduce my anger levels because I was just furious at what had transpired in that first half. There's no fight, no real winning any battles, no interest really from the players, it seemed. So I was a bit fed up. And a guy in the concourse said, "Oh, this will be another barn. It will win this 7-5." I was like, "No way! It's not happening. It's a different league, different standards. It's not happening." He wasn't quite right, but the way it panned out, the best point we will ever gain, I think. It's certainly the best point in a long time. And I think to this day, I don't think we've been involved in a 5-5 draw. I think somebody pointed out yesterday that the highest ever scoring draw in the league was a 6-6 one Leicester Arsenal in 1930 or something. So, but the game was just daft, and you can't really summarize it in 30 to 60 seconds. It was bonkers. The defending was awful. The attacking was brilliant. The atmosphere was amazing, and we all walked away with our jaws on the floor, and not for the first time watching Wrexham in the last few years.
Andy Gilpin, why don't you tell us what you thought and introduce our guest?
All right. I'll tell you what I thought first. Right. Okay. It adds to the whole mantra around Wrexham, the crazy script. I was just watching the highlights now, and obviously the fellas went on about Hollywood scripts and Hollywood endings, and could you write this? Yeah, okay, I'm pretty fed up of that by now, but there is something to it. So let's take each part of the team. So the front two, I thought they were great. Absolutely no complaints there. Bickerstaff, he's rough, but he's a raw, but he keeps scoring and he tries, and I can't fault that guy. I'm almost getting to the position now. If Mullin's not as bad as everyone says he is, then don't go and buy anyone. We don't need to. Bickerstaff can carry the fight for us for the next couple of weeks. Wing backs, fine. Like seeing Mendy go past people. Same with Barnett. Maybe you need to tie up a little bit defensively. But that brings up to my next point. So midfield, they are not bad players. They are just too open. When I saw Cannon was in the deep lying role in the team sheet, I thought we might be in trouble because I knew Swindon are a good little passing side. And looking back at the goals, as I just have a couple of minutes ago, a couple of times Cannon could have come out and really closed someone, but didn't. Gave them a bit of space and they scored. So as a bare minimum, I would play Luke Young in there, not just because he's the captain, not just because he's a good, gritty defensive midfielder, but because he leads by example. And, Luke Young wouldn't have stood for that first half performance yesterday. He would have been going absolutely apeshit over it. And he would have set the tone a little bit better than our midfield did yesterday. So I'm not saying Cannon's a bad player. He's obviously a very good, skillful player, which Parky wants to really integrate into the side. But I just don't think he's your deep lying midfielder, especially when you've got zippy players coming and getting past you, and doing little 1-2s, which was happening yesterday. So as a default, I would go Young. If he doesn't want to go Young, O'Connor. But I just think you need someone anchoring that midfield a little bit better than we had yesterday. Lee was brilliant. Jones 2 goals, never stops running. I would keep that, but I would have the balance of Young or O'Connor at the centre. That brings me to my next point. You've got the back three and the keeper. I think we need Hayden back. I think as soon as Hayden is fit, it adds a lot to that defensive back line because it's more presence and it's more pace. And I think pace is where we really were struggling a little bit yesterday. Pace in the cover. Boyle's fine. Tozer is still our sort of talismanic defender, but I think someone alongside him, like Hayden, will just bring a different level to it. Lastly, I know I've been banging on a little bit. So lastly, it's the keeper. And this is open to debate. What do we do? What do we do about the keeper? I mean, Foster's obviously, he's had a great career. He's he adds a lot to the dressing room, but he has conceded 11 goals in 3 home games. And some of those goals...
He's conceded 21 goals in 12 games. Don't tell me that he's not in danger of tarnishing a very, very
absolutely.
21 goals in 12 games is not good enough.
I know. All I'm going to say before I open up to you guys, because I've been banging on a little bit, is I don't feel comfortable of a shot coming in that Foster will save it. And that is the bare minimum I want from any keeper. Andy Marriott was an absolutely brilliant shot stopper. And anything that came near him, I thought Marriott would save it. And any problems would be from the other parts of Marriott's game. But shot stopping is the bare minimum, I think, football fans want now from a keeper. And there was a couple of times where he went down really slow yesterday. I can't really blame him and say that's a massive gaffe. I just want him to do a little bit better or get a little bit closer to some of these shots. And like you, Tim, I do think his place is under threat.
Yeah, I mean, I've just had a bit of a slightly touchy argument on one of the WhatsApp groups about Foster, and people saying that, oh well, he's been exposed. Of course, he's been exposed because defence and the goalkeeper as a collective have not been up to scratch so far this season for the most part. 13 goals conceded. Yes, we scored 13, but I think one of the Notts County stats lads said that we think at home last season in the league we conceded 19 in the entire season. So something's not quite right. Somebody said to me that they feel that it doesn't look like the defence can trust Foster. I'm not sure that's true. I don't know what it is. For me, when Leighton's in goal, I can hear him in a full stadium, loud as day. I'm not hearing Foster saying anything until the ball's in the back of the net, when he's tearing a strip after what's just transpired in front of him. That bothers me and it irks me. And people will probably argue, well, how are you going to hear him in a crowd full of 10,000? You just can. Keepers call for things. I've not seen him call for anything. There's a massive issue with communication between him and his defence. There has to be. And was he at fault for any of the goals yesterday? Could he have done better with the sum? I think there was a couple he maybe could have narrowed the gap a little bit quicker. Didn't happen. He was beaten by a very, very good shot. He wasn't going to be able to do anything about that one. Yes, he's exposed, but for a keeper of his caliber, are we asking too much for him to be better than we all expect him to be better than what he's turned out to be? I think that's a fair point. But then on the flip side, can we expect too much from a keeper really in the twilight of his career now that maybe should have left it as it was at the end of last season? I don't know. I don't know what people's thoughts are.
Lots to discuss. I'm just watching some of the goals back now. I'm just watching the highlights again. I don't think you can do anything about the first two. Third one, you could make an argument that maybe he can get to it, but it's well placed. And at the end of the day, why are the defence letting someone get off a shot 18 yards out?
Let's make the argument very simple, right? He's conceded 21 goals in 12 games. If that's Mark Howard, right, there's a burning effigy hanging up from the.
I agree with that. I think there's people.
So
people would scapegoat other players at that record.
You have to bookend that he's an ex-England international. You have to bookend the fact he's ex-Man United, ex-West Brom. He's had a stellar career, which of course he has. And you have to take that out of it and go, well, your core job as a goalkeeper is to keep clean sheets.
Of course. It's also the core job of the defence, though, right?
Yeah, of course it is. Of course it is.
So, but the point being is, just because we would burn effigies in Mark Howard doesn't mean that we should start doing about Foster. Is my argument.
What I'm saying, I just feel that naturally you feel like Foster will get given more leeway because of what he's achieved in his career, and I just feel that we're at a point now where you can't hide behind the fact he's been a very good goalkeeper, but the stats and the facts are he's not filling me with confidence at the moment. Andy's just said the same thing, and I don't know. It just seems a little bit on edge.
I understand. Yeah, it's a fair point. I think a lot of people are talking about it. I'm not sure though. I think you could make an argument that if anything, the fall is greater. There's greater pressure. He's not afforded more leeway because of his history. The expectations are higher. But anyway, we've got a lot more to discuss on this. Andy, do you want to introduce our special guest who's waiting very patiently through your 10-minute monologue about yesterday's game?
It wasn't a 10-minute monologue. It was a
8
very
minutes.
good, very
It's actually
succinct.
12.
Yeah.
You can tell he's not hungry, but that's the reason he did it for so long. He made that point.
Right, we're on to introduce Andy Foley-Jones, who a friend of the fanzine, who Wrexham fan for years, used to write a column for me in the Daily Post back in the day. Well, he's got a book out. We'll come to that later. But Andy, did you see the game yesterday? And if so, where did you see it?
First of all, morning, guys. Yes, I did see the game. Sadly, I'm away for a few weeks at the moment. So I'm in Fuerteventura, but I've managed to stream. I streamed and I was steaming as well yesterday in a little village in the north of the island, watching the game with on my iPad through my VPN, and watched it with about 50 local Spaniards and a couple of Italians who none of them had ever seen a 5-5 draw before. And I think, as you alluded to, I don't think I have. So it was bonkers. When it was what was it at half time? I get a bit confused. It was
4-1.
Was it 4-1?
Swindon.
Yeah, so I slipped into my Paddy Power account and put a bet on 5-4. I think it was 33-1, and other bookmakers are available, of course. That's what you have to say, isn't it, in these things? And
Absolutely, we are actually covered by the license fee as well, so you have to say that.
so I'm not saying this, but you always know that second half are going to come out, and you know that they're going to come with you're confident that Parky's going to do something that's going to change something, and so when it came to 4-3 and the locals were kind of going nuts, and I was going nuts, and the beers were going down, and the tapas was going down. The squid was everywhere. It was fantastic. And obviously, when they snatched the equaliser, it was pulpo all round, and they got the shots out. So it was a good night, a good afternoon, and a good night. But going on to the goalkeeping stuff, I don't want to outbid Andy for monologues, because he is clearly the monologue king. But the goalkeeping thing, I think we could all panic a little bit with. By the way, did it mean you were my boss at the Daily Post?
I don't know. I mean,
for you.
Well, you were a free contributor, so no.
Andy was the
I
Fagin.
was freelance, wasn't I?
Yeah, totally. I don't think I can claim ownership of you. I couldn't make you dance like I did with some people in the newsroom.
Copyright stuff going on here.
It's just the way he says it, like he's Fagin of the Daily Post. Oh, handing out. You wrote a column for me. One of my many minions.
That's what I picked up. That was the tone that I just wanted to. Exactly. Yeah. I wanted just to get it in there straight away, just to.
Andy, I think I wanted to sort of impose dominance on this podcast to show that I am the top Andy in the two Andys. So
Well, it was clear. It shows your insecurity a bit, Andy. So you need to maybe work on that.
Anyway, the keeper situation.
Anyway, goalkeepers. What do you want to talk about? Goalkeepers? Or are we doing goalkeepers?
No. What's your opinion? I think we're a bit on the fence here about what we would do. But simple question: does Mark Howard start in goal for you against Barrow?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I'd prefer to have my 90 starting goal instead of Howard.
Oh,
and she died in 1996.
Oh wow!
But she was very nimble, and she.
I love
would get down quicker than Mark Howard.
You've deflected the controversy from me in a heartbeat. I'm a big fan of that. You can take the heat, not me. Love it.
No, he's clearly, you can't sit here and all be happy that goals have been conceded. I totally get that, but I think it's bigger than that, isn't it? I think what's weird is the way Foster seems to go down, and it does kind of mirror the way I used to watch Howard, and I used to be stunned by his speed or lack of speed as he went down to make what would seem to be a fairly standard save or non-save, because he didn't often save it. and Foster seems to have coaching, or I don't know, but it seems to be. If you watch it, if you're more than me, if you could get something where you had a split screen and started watching the way he goes down. Maybe I'm making it up, but it just seems to kind of be. He looks a bit like Mark Howard with his what's the word, technique. So maybe there's some kind of deeper issue there with goalkeeping coaching, and I don't know. Maybe I've had too many Estrellas or whatever.
Or is it too many? They've been doing too many podcasts with each other, and they are just morphing into the same person.
Maybe. I would prefer Leighton. If Leighton, didn't get injured all the time, I'd love Leighton. I think he's the best goalie, but he's always injured, isn't he? But at least we've got now about another 4 or 5. If that's I like the idea of a Sligo Rangers, is it?
We've got
just
6 now. We signed
of,
another keeper. We signed another keeper in the last 19 minutes. There's another one due in the next 40. So by the end of the day, we're going to have 16 keepers.
Yeah,
we signed. They're all linked to Irish boy bands.
Probably. We signed Liam Hall in the week from Bradford Park Avenue, another youngster. So we'll see.
Part of Foster's contract is actually that we've got to sign a keeper every month to go on his podcast. Otherwise, you can't get him on.
The other thing with Foster, maybe not having a GoPro means that he doesn't feel that that he likes the circus of it, and he likes the GoPro behind him. Maybe that's had an impact. I don't know.
He hasn't got it in the goal anymore. I don't think he's permitted to use it.
No.
So that thing's died a death. Well, the body cam thing was quite funny.
That could be an issue, couldn't it?
I mean, although I was initially harsh in my criticism of Foster, and I stand by it. On the flip side, he was very good at Wimbledon last week, and he did more than secure us a point there, not just a penalty save. He had a good game. So he's had a good game. He's had not so good game. So if he just start at Barrow, chances are he'll have a good game. But yeah, I think we're all similar to what you just said about Leighton being the preferred number 1. But, as has always been the case, unfortunately. I mean, hopefully there's no Bromley for him to get injured. Well, there is no Bromley for him to get injured at for like the 4th season running. So if he comes back, it'd be interesting to see where Parky sees him in that squad. But there we are, the goalkeepers union.
Well, let's keep talking about the defence, though, Mr. Foley-Jones. What's your view, Andy, on kind of what's going wrong there from what you've seen?
I think, again, without slagging one person off, but I think Cannon has been a big issue, and it obviously gives you the opportunity of a load of punning with Cannon, which is always good. He's misfiring as Parky got the balls to get rid of him. Look at Andy trying to think of a Cannon-related pun.
Nobody's listening.
Andy doesn't come up with any of these. He just gets his minions to write content for him. And
nobody's lit. Nobody's lit his fuse. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Look at that one.
I have a room where I have 1,000 children writing 1,000 puns, and I'm gonna go in there in a minute and demand some Andy Cannon puns. Otherwise, they don't get gruel.
Okay.
Wow. If that's
in our little group of where we sit in the Mould Road stand, we just pun during the whole game, and it's you look at the team sheet and see who's on the other side, and it becomes really tedious. And the thing with punning is, I love punning. I think it's a real nuance of comedy. But I listened to a Steve Coogan podcast the other week, and he said that punning was the dad dancing of comedy. It was the lowest form of comedy, and it really hurt me because, maybe that's what I am. I'm a dad dancer when it comes to comedy.
Well, you're with friends here anyway. But anyway, Cannon's misfiring is the argument you're making at the back of that midfield.
Yeah, and I think like there's a lot of love going around for Luke Young, and you can't have anything but admiration for the way he deals with setbacks and being dropped, and you want him there by your side, don't you? If you were going out in a pub and somebody was going to start on you, you'd want Luke Young with you. He's just that kind of guy. So, and he's the games he's played, he's been fantastic. He just ups the tempo, doesn't he? He might not be the most technically gifted of all the midfielders we have, but he's got that invisible aura which he's also improved. You know, the thing he used to do, that clapping thing, when a couple of seasons ago, and he seems to have developed a little bit more. Did you not notice he used to do this all the time? Yeah, and it wasn't enough for me. And then suddenly I think he's taken quite a lot of time to enhance the way he gets best out of the group of players. I just really like him.
Luke Young is to clapping what Garth Crooks is to nodding, is what
Yeah.
I've thought for a while. Yeah, a lot of love for Luke Young at the moment. Do you think that Tom O'Connor would help solidify the defence if he was to play in that defensive midfield role? Would it become the Tom O'Connor show?
Yeah, I love Tom O'Connor. Tom O'Connor's very good. Very good. I love Tom O'Connor. Yeah, and I think he's great. He's great in the central defence, but I think he's wasted there. If we've got central defenders who do it by trade, I think he's wasted if he's not playing in the midfield in some place there. Yeah, do you have James? I always think that James Jones and Young were a bit too similar, but do you have James Jones, Young, Tom O'Connor, but then you've obviously got to accommodate Mr. Lee.
Jonesy was good yesterday, I thought. Tim, what do you make of the midfield more generally? I should say as well, similar to you, Andy, I was on a flight back yesterday during the game, so I was out in Mallorca for the week. I watched the Walsall game. I streamed it, and then at half time we were taking off yesterday. It was 4-1. Obviously, when we landed, it was 5-5. Bonkers, but yeah. What were your thoughts on the midfield, Tim?
I mean, we've all mentioned how Lee was so good, man of the match, but we need to keep him away from corners. He can't take them. That's as simple as that. He can't take corners. He's awful at them. One went straight out, and one just flew over the heads of everybody. So yeah, need to keep him off them or trying to be game on the set piece. But yeah, I don't know. The midfield just. I mean, we know it's not quite perfect in the way that I need to, because I noticed the difference between us and Swindon. When the Swindon midfield got the ball, the passing was always ahead of the colleague. It was never behind. They would never turn back and look to pass it to the sides, which is exactly what we did. Our midfield gets the ball, instead of driving forward and looking for a pass that's forward, whether there's players on or the angles are on, it was always a case we had to turn and we'd pass it behind. And I was like, why are we doing that? Are they forcing us into that? Is it a positional thing? I don't know. I think Barnett got a bit of stick yesterday. I thought he was pretty decent. He does what he does, gets to the byline, crosses it in. But it's still not quite ticking over. And my only worry is that Parky's gone down this strange route early season of, he's even said that he's going to rotate until he finds his best 11. At what point does he find that best 11? Is it 10 games in? Is it 6 games in? To me, it's almost like he's throwing more shade on the whole pre-season tour and the scheduling for that. Clearly, he wasn't too happy with the way that panned out. But
well, he needs to get over that, and he needs to get over that.
Exactly. And Young, people say, well, I'm not sure Young's the answer. Well, at the moment, he's one of the answers.
Definitely the answer.
And you have to start him because he offers much more protection across that defence than what we've got at the moment. As simple as that. Tom O'Connor can probably do it, probably not to the effect that Young can. And as has just been alluded to, people, we all know it, is that Young might not be the most technically gifted player in there now when you see what the players are around him. But in terms of what he gives you, the experience, the drive, the vision, his passing is great. I can't see how we can afford not to have him in there. He has to be in there. It's as simple as that.
No, I agree.
So that's the key factor for me. Once you get him in there, I think it tends to drive up the standards of everybody else in that midfield. And when he's not in there, maybe it just isn't quite right. And that you've got Lee then driving that midfield. He's probably one of the ones that's gone under the radar as one of the kind of leaders of that group, which seems to be coming to the fore more, I think, now.
Yeah, I mean, look at that midfield against Walsall, right? Okay, Walsall had a couple of chances, but we looked more defensively strong because Young was spotting danger and covering it. And if you've got a defence that's finding its form and gelling together, that's what you need. So, I mean, I can't understand why he would change a winning team and a winning midfield like that. Now, he might say, oh, I wanted to rest Luke Young. Well, he started one game. It's August. You don't need to rest him. And the other thing about that is, you know, we're talking about Lee and his corners. Well, who's the best corner taker, best set piece player by a mile? It's Luke Young.
Yeah.
Look, if he
I was
doesn't
just going
rate
to say
Young,
that. Yeah.
if he doesn't rate Young, fair enough. Go out and buy another defensive midfielder in that mold, but you think is technically better, and do it that way. But trying to play a lovely passing midfielder like Cannon as your defensive shield just isn't working. If it was up to me, obviously you've got to pick Lee. I would pick Young at the moment, and I would pick Tom O'Connor. I think maybe Young and Jones are a little bit similar. And maybe there wouldn't be the control there if both of them played together to get the ball and get it to Lee. But I think O'Connor can do that. It'll be a slightly advanced role for O'Connor, but he's good enough to play it because he can play anywhere.
But
Right.
Jones won't come out that slide for next week because he scored 2 yesterday. So
He might do. I mean, who knows? I mean, Parky's still rotating. He's resting people.
But the bottom line is, we don't play as good without our club captain or team captain, and whichever one he is. That's clear as mud, clear as day, isn't it? It's just obvious. And the other man we had on the pitch with the captain's armband looked a little bit rattled. Got to be said, Tozer didn't have one of his finer games. When pace runs at our defence as it stands, we look scared to death.
Yeah.
We're turned and the ball's in the back of the net. So.
To maybe be a bit more positive, we're conceding an awful lot of goals. We're scoring a lot of goals too, and looked like we could score more. I remember saying to my dad after the MK Dons game, after that bonkers game, just kind of being like, we could have won that game. There were 3 or 4 quite decent chances in that game where we scored 3 goals. Sounds like all I've seen are the extended highlights from yesterday, but it sounds like it was a similar case again. There were a couple of chances that went begging. So we're creating a lot, right?
Yeah. It's a bit like the old Keegan and Newcastle thing, wasn't it? When they used to be beating people 3-2 and 4-3. And I've got a mate I sit by, Glenn, who's always likes the underdog, always kind of supports Dean Keats, and he'd love a good 0-0. It was nothing better for him, a nice 0-0. Where for me, I'd much prefer to have a nice 5-5. For me, it's about being entertained, and whilst it's right that we're having a debate about goalkeeping and defensive frailties, let's be honest, it's hell of an exciting, isn't it? It's like a five-a-side match.
I'm the same. I'm with you. What would you prefer, Tim? Would you prefer to have a really solid performance and it was a 0-0 yesterday, or would you prefer what you guys witnessed?
What we witnessed, just because you kind of become accustomed to a bit of drama over the last few years. From a positive point of view, as opposed to the sort of drama of North Ferriby United in the FA Trophy, the sort of drama that we didn't win. Consequently, Dean Keats said yesterday, before the match at the Mice Gwyn, he said that if Kevin Wilkin had kept him on for an extra 10 minutes, we would have won that. That's what he said. To offer coming back to the protection, because all about momentum, which we saw yesterday, and if you can hold out a little bit further, makes a big difference, especially at that point in the game. But yeah, I'm all for the drama, and I'm all for Jake Bickerstaff starting until Paul Mullin comes back, because I know there's an argument about him being loaned out. He's already had 2 loan spells previously. Does he need to be loaned out again? He's got 2 in 2. He's taking his chance really, really well.
Interestingly, did Keatsy go to the game afterwards? Do we know?
I don't think so.
No, he didn't.
Okay, he would have a heart attack, I'm sure, if he did. Anyway, what was I going to say? Also, an interesting add-on to the discussion we had a couple of weeks ago, already the MK Dons match, to leaving early. Now, for me, yesterday is your absolute classic example of why you don't leave early, because for every 99 of those that doesn't happen, the one time it does happen, that is the best feeling ever. And you've missed it because you couldn't be asked to sit for the last 5 minutes of a game. Don't know, my view.
Yeah.
Don't write to me.
Well, you know the whole thing about ticketing and loyalty schemes and all this at the moment. I think there should be a section where you get docked points for every 10 seconds you leave early.
So on board for that.
People who do it. There's a little section. You see the same people, don't you, where you sit, and you don't know their personal circumstances, all that kind of stuff. Especially midweek games when it gets quite late when there's 18 minutes of injury time. But they stand up, and that you get a bit anxious because they're about to stand up, and you're waiting for them because they normally do it on like 84 minutes or whatever their preference is. And I often want to kind of grab them, and just say, sit there. Wait, especially now when there's a load of injury time, you're not just missing that 4 minutes or 5 minutes, you're missing another 9. So I think that's the way we deal with it. We dock them loyalty points
and grab them.
Just revoke the season tickets.
Just add that to the bulletin.
Maybe they go down on the list.
Yeah, it was mad. I mean, the amount of the crescendo of seats flapping upwards when that 5th one went in. It's like, And I've always said, and I've always stood by it, that anytime Wrexham concede 5 goals, that's my cut-off point. That's always been my cut-off point to leave. But in recent years, you just know, this team's not dead and buried. They're just not. They go into the very end, as you just said, because of the change in the rules, so much more added time. It's not like, you got a couple of minutes. We scored twice in added time yesterday, so we made it count, took absolute advantage of it. And I'm not sure how many of them got back in. I think once you're out, you're out. I don't think they permit re-entry. So
I always find the argument about it weird though as well. And people go like, "Oh, I'm not going to sit there and watch that disgusting performance." It's not disgusting, is it? Like a dog coming and doing his business on your doorstep is disgusting. It's disappointing that the team has not quite managed to do what we would like them to do. But it's not like they've gone and they've gone and sort of flicked your nan when they're walking past. It's like not awful, is it? It's
what to your nan?
No, there's no intent, is there?
I couldn't think of a decent analogy.
That's twice grandparents.
All I'm saying is, Andy, if someone walked past your nan and flicked her like that on the side of the head, you would be upset.
Well, my nan's been dead for 15 years, so they'd have to have dug her up and flicked her. So that is a double slight on me.
For those listening and not watching, Reese is doing a sort of flick with his hand, like a flick to the ear.
Flicky motion.
Yeah, like you flick your mate's ears in school, like that.
You've got it.
Wow,
yeah.
Bully Reese.
All I'm saying is, your football team not playing well, even having a terrible performance, is not disgusting. I always find those words a bit odd when people use them.
Restated the elderly. Crazy.
Yeah.
Well timed.
Anyway,
it's like confessional today.
Shall we move on a little bit from the match? We can always come back to it. So our guest, Andrew Foley-Jones, is not only a published author many times, but also played a little bit of a role in the takeover. Andy, do you want to take us sort of through what you did, and do you know any dark secrets?
You're always trying to get the sleaze, aren't you? That's that's harsh, isn't it? The brief background is, and again, stop me if I'm entering into an Andy Gilpin monologue territory, but I acted for myself, and I'm a partner in a law firm in North Wales and Chester called McKenzie Jones, to get a little plug in there. And we acted for the club for a number of years when it was fan-owned. And so I personally worked very closely with Spencer Harris for a while, and we did work for nothing, because obviously the club didn't have any money, and even though it was stuff that I didn't, or the firm didn't do day to day, we had probably better knowledge than a group of lay people. And I've got to say that without Spencer gets his detractors, but seeing what he was doing on a day-to-day basis there was unbelievable. Doing a day job and then having to go and make decisions on things, which is a particularly nuanced business, which nobody has the experience of running. You don't go to college to run a football club, and he was doing it, running a family, doing his day job. Hats off to him. So all the people who used to criticise him occasionally, I used to want to say, well, come on, you go and make a decision. Someone's got to make them. And were they always right? Maybe not. But anyway, it's old ground, that, isn't it? So we got the call to say there's going to be an announcement in a couple of minutes. I haven't been able to tell you about it because there's a strict NDA, and you're probably not going to believe it. And obviously the announcement came, and without going over old ground, it was to say you wouldn't believe it is an understatement, isn't it? So we then got put. I got put on the team to help with the deal. So I didn't do all the deal. The deal was done by a number of different lawyers doing different sections, and but there's no real dark secrets to it all. It was a sale of a football club, and so the usual due diligence was done, and the strange thing, it was all done remotely because of COVID. So I've got to say, I was first of all very excited by what was happening, but I did think I would get to have a big celebratory completion meeting where we'd go and go to LA or something and have a bit. That never happened. It was me sitting at home in my double diamond Wrexham away kit, doing the deal on Zoom.
Were you drinking double diamond as you were doing it? Were you drinking double diamond as you were doing the deal?
No, I don't know if they still do it.
I don't know. I mean, I'm just a white lightning person, so I'll just stick to that.
So it was, as a lawyer and as a fan, it was unbelievable. You can imagine it was. You just wanted to. You wanted to, when you're speaking to the other lawyers and you're talking about things, which is usually a very straight-laced, black and white process and procedure. I just kept wanting to say, "This is amazing. I'm a Wrexham fan. We're going to be owned by and I had to kind of keep this level of professionalism going. And but I did get to know the lawyers very well, all of whom were football fans in their own right. So they got it. They understood that I was a fan. I was essentially a volunteer who happened just to be part of this amazing thing that went on. So yeah, it was. I think stepping back a bit before the actual deal, the weird thing for me doing a lot of legal work for the club during the trust days was it affected my relationship with the club and the people I used to go and watch the games with, because part of being a fan, like we're doing now, you have conjecture, you have rumour, you have gossip, you discuss, are we going to sign so-and-so? We should sign so-and-so, we should get rid of him. I got to the point where I knew a lot of what was going on behind the scenes. So when I was having a pint before the game and people were talking about stuff, I knew the answers often and I couldn't say. And so it kind of affected, and I started going to games and sitting in boardrooms and going to Barrow away and sitting in a boardroom, and stuff like that was surreal, because I was going there as a fan. I wanted just to watch the game, but I was having to do small talk about stuff which I wanted to leave to the day job. So apart from doing the deal in my double diamond top and my lucky underpants, there isn't anything massively dark. I didn't ever get to meet them, which is a shame. That's pretty much it.
Andy, keep going, Andy Gilpin. Andrew,
I don't want to monopolise everything. I've already been slagged off with having a monologue twice.
Was that a monologue by me then? Was it all right?
Yeah, no, it's fine, but it's stuff we didn't know. So
whereas Andy just
good monologue
stuff we know all the time, and we have to sit through it, and I just edit it out later. No, but I mean, it must have been. How difficult was it to keep sort of all the information from everyone when you were involved? Like, it must have been really hard. But I suppose that's part of your job. But still, this is different.
Yeah, it's part of your job. So you train, and you're on as a lawyer. My mates are always, my family, they're always amazed. They always like, if someone locally does something and you've been part of it, and they always say, like my mum will say, you never mentioned that so-and-so was selling that place or that business. And I said, well, I wouldn't do it, Mum. It's, it's none of your business. And so you kind of get used to it. But, and maybe I think I was always good at keeping secrets anyway. Funny that feeling of power. It's nice to know something somebody else doesn't. But yeah, the football stuff was really difficult because it did affect the dynamic, because you do sit there with your mates. And, I sit with my mates, Glyn and Colin and Stephen and Jason, and we all chat about stuff. And suddenly they knew I did stuff for the club, but they didn't know to the extent I was doing stuff for the club. So it was almost just, I suddenly became incredibly dull on match days, or more dull than I normally was, because I couldn't partake in anything apart from talking about positional stuff, or the goalkeeping position, or someone was rubbish. But when somebody's saying, "Oh yeah, I've heard we're in talks with so and so, we're going to sign him," if I knew, I couldn't say anything. So it was like it did affect it. But no, so going back to your question, Reese, again, and monologuing. It was more difficult than it was for a normal non-Wrexham related deal, because I did want to tell everyone, and I couldn't. So,
what were the first words that tumbled out of your mouth when you realised it was Rob and Ryan?
It was just, I thought it was a piss take, like a lot of people, and I was probably more excited by the Rob McElhenney side of things, because I always loved It's Always Sunny, and I was never as much into Ryan Reynolds. Yeah, I'd seen Deadpool, and then I'd seen the other stuff which wasn't so good. But it was the Rob McElhenney stuff which I just really like him. Just thought he was. I liked his humour, and I liked his offbeat way he did things. But obviously, it was great knowing that Ryan was the one with the real commercial sway. So yeah, it was like everybody else, but then yeah, it did turn to the whole point, thinking, oh yeah, it'd be nice to meet all these guys and get involved and have these big lawyer meetings. I'd have been quite happy going down to a meeting every day, but we didn't have any.
Yeah, can I?
Well, we know that Rob listens to the pod. I think they both do. So if you want to send him a book, I'm sure he'll take it.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, I think I'd love him to read the book, because I think it would be right up his street. So
tell us about the book, Andy. Come on.
That's it. Perfect link, that, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Good dynamic. Tell us all about it.
Look at that.
It's great cover.
It's a cover by a guy called Jamie Pike, who does a lot of stuff for Tim Williams and Spirit 58.
There we are.
Look at that, Rob and Ryan. That would translate into a wonderful film.
The film has turned into a film pitch now. Wow.
Exactly. It's not what I've said. It's just
Who would you get to play Ryan Reynolds?
Yeah. So do you want to have a little question about the book? Was that?
Yeah. Well, who would you get to play if you had a film? Who would play Ryan Reynolds and who would play Rob McElhenney? And tell us what the plot of this film would be, i.e., what is the book about?
Okay. The plot of the book is I wake up in 2030 after being in a coma for 10 years with no memory of anything that's happened in that 10-year period, or indeed in my life before. In the room I wake up in, which is this very bland-looking hospital room, there's a cryptic psychiatrist called Dr. Paskin, who's a distant relative of South African legend John Paskin. She hasn't got a moustache. I was going to put that in, but I thought that might be a bit daft. And there's also Rob and Ryan in the room. So the next couple of weeks, we spend 2 weeks looking at a bank of TVs, which are on the wall, and filling me in on what's happened over the last 10 years. So from the pandemic through to 2030. And during that period, there's lots of things going on. So obviously things that haven't yet happened, which I'm predicting might happen. So there's lots of political stuff, lots of the Tories, the decline of the Tories, which I think will be popular for a lot of people. Boris and Rishi and all these end up in a purpose-built prison in the Cayman Islands, and there's Joe Wicks becomes Prime Minister. Bear Grylls is his assistant. There's alien abductions, from Alf, the 1980s guy who I think Ryan Reynolds has bought the rights to recently. The monarchy falls. There's all things going on, but in the background to this, it's all about Wrexham's rise up the leagues as well. Because it started off without anything to do with Wrexham. It was just about this thing. It's almost like a satirical look at what's going to happen in the 2020s. But then the deal happened and lockdown happened, and I then thought, well, I'll bring this in. I'll bring the Wrexham deal into it. And it culminates in 2030 with a winner-takes-all playoff match to get into the Premiership against FC Romans of Chester, who are a new club. I don't know how many clubs Chester have had now, but it would be the third, wouldn't it? And Hugh Jackman's bought them. So Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds are having this fight off to get into the Premier League, and that's where the book finishes. So we're all in the turf. There's lots of celebrities. There's Alf pretending to be a football hooligan. You're the alien. Gary Lineker's in there. There's a whole host of people, and then you have to wait and see if we win or not. So that's the plot.
Please, somebody turn it into a film. The idea of seeing Alf in a Stone Island jacket with a flare in the corner of the turf is quite something.
But you know what's weird? The Alf thing, you see, that's happened, and obviously Hugh Jackman coming to the ground's happened, and Sinead O'Connor's in it, and she's died. So there's been, I'm not saying I'm Nostradamus, but there's been some stuff that's happened already, which is pretty weird since the book's come out. And again, joking aside about the film stuff, there's somebody's approached about doing a film, so we're in talks at the moment about that, which is pretty exciting. Fearless in Devotion gets a couple of mentions because there is some fact in there as well. It's not just fiction. It's kind of about what it's like to be a Wrexham fan, what it's like to be a football fan, about the locality. Yeah, there was, I suppose, from a commercial sense, there was an eye on the North American market, thinking that anything to do with Wrexham, people will be interested to know a bit about the history, about what's happened, and the journey we've been through. Yeah, so there's little moments like when Dorking fans are singing "Where were you when you were shit," and those ironic moments. And then the other backstory to it is you kind of find out how I ended up in a coma as well. That's one of the side stories. So it's either I've been smacked in the face in a football hooligan issue with Scunthorpe United, or whether it was a guy I play five-a-side with called Bal, who's Hungarian, who took offence to me making some comment about his mum's goulash, or whether I had a car accident with Robin Ryan. So you kind of find out how I actually fell into a coma. So yeah, it's been out for a month now, so it's doing well.
What's the reaction been like?
Yeah, it's been good because it's always one of those things. You put something out there, and you've got to have a thick skin to put something out there, whatever you do, haven't you? Whether you're doing a podcast, a fanzine, in a band. Yeah, I always respect anyone who does anything, because I think if you put yourself out there, you've got to give somebody respect for doing it. It's a bit like the people who like Spencer Harris off. It's easy to sit there in the shadows, isn't it, and criticize. For me, there's never a shit book. There's never a shit band. There's never, because you've gone out there and you've had the balls to do it. But yeah, there is that feeling when it's gone out and you wake up the next day and you think, especially now with social media and Amazon reviews, that if somebody wants to take a pop at you, they can do it really severely now and really hurtfully. So even though you kind of wake up with a thick skin, you go and you check out your first review and you're thinking, oh, this could set the scene. And the reviews have been great, and there's been lots of people contacting me about doing stuff with it. Someone wants to do an audio book of it and trying to get the famous characters together to do it, which would be great. So yeah, it's good, and that just gives you a bit of confidence, Ben, as well. But you're not just a lunatic who's writing stuff which people don't want to read. Or maybe I am. I don't know. Maybe I'm deluded.
What more can you tell us about the film? Or is that very much hush hush, the talks?
Yeah, somebody approached me about another book I'd done. I'm not doing a double plug here because that'd be too shameless. I did a book about Wales getting to the semis in the Euros called "Don't Take Me Home: A Cat Called Robson Carnu," which again was this surreal kind of half part fact, part fiction journey of me and my mate Richard going around France, and ended up in all sorts of scrapes and different wacky style races around France, and obviously with a backdrop of the Wales team doing fantastic. But he contacted me about that, and then found out about the Wrexham book. It sounds very glamorous, but he was in Cannes at the time doing some film stuff, and there was a woman out there who was doing proofreading for the Wrexham book, and they got chatting, and she said, "Oh, there's this book that I think you'd love and would be a great film." So she kind of set the motion. She said, "Would you be okay to have a chat with him?" And I was like, trying to be cool, but yeah, that'd be all right. Yeah, we'll have a chat with him about making it into a film. So we had a Zoom call the next day, and he's looking to turn it into a script. So it's it's possible, but like anything, these things, some things come off, some things don't. But It's all exciting.
Very exciting. Well, we'll have to have you back on to discuss when that film is announced. Big Hollywood budget, I'm assuming. We can.
Well, who knows? You know what? I'd actually like it to be something Welsh. I'd like it to be like a Welsh, like bilingual film to try and keep, obviously with lots of Hollywood money swirling around in the background.
Mainly in your pocket.
I don't think you said
I'm saying.
I don't think you said who you're going to get to play Rob and Ryan, though. Did you cast them?
I'd like Rob and Ryan to play themselves.
Or how about get Rob to play Ryan and Ryan to play Rob?
Maybe, yeah, absolutely. And I thought, we could.
And Danny DeVito to play you.
Everyone, people who leave good reviews on Amazon, I say, look, there's a cameo role for you in it. So it's,
I want to play Geraint.
Pardon?
I want to play Geraint.
I think. Well,
need a wig.
I've promised Geraint he can play himself, but maybe he could play you.
Phil Parkinson.
Yeah.
Could I play your mate from Five Aside, your Hungarian one, whose mum makes shit goulash?
Well, he's a funny character. He's a really, really good footballer. We play on a Tuesday night in Chester, and he's a great footballer, but he's really lazy. And when I play Five Aside, I kind of, for me, if you're going to bit like Luke Young, I'm not saying I'm good as Luke Young, but I'll give him all that, because I think if you're going to play properly, track back, and he doesn't track back, and I go insane because he doesn't track back, and then we end up having a bit of a row, and his mum's goulash comes into the equation, and it all goes a bit messy. But no, if it comes to a film, I think you lads need to be in it.
Thank you. Well, we'll hold you to that, and we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'll play Angry Man number 3.
You guys,
Angry hangover
man doing monologue in pub.
Yeah.
Can I play one of Alf's mates? Love Alf.
Yeah, he doesn't love Alf. Right, should we tie this up, lads? Because the Lionesses are on, and I wouldn't mind watching it. Predictions. Have we got a midweek game? Sorry, I should know the answer to this.
No. First Tuesday off this season.
Great. All right. So we've just got Barrow away. I'm going corporate. So £46 at the Barrow Stadium gets me a match ticket and gets me as many Scotch eggs as I can eat.
Barrow Stadium, is that what it's called these days?
Well, what's it called?
Holker Street.
Holker Street. I have been there before. It's bloody cold. Yeah, but I can eat a lot of Scotch eggs. So Barrow's owner may be walking out that ground with his pockets turned out by the end of that match. I reckon
Alan Partridge, that isn't it?
You got your 9-inch plate, Andy?
I will bring my own serviettes. So right, basically, look, it's a clash of styles. I think we'll be up for the fight. I'd love Hayden to be back. I probably can't see it, but I think we're going to win 2-1. Tim?
After my Foster lamenting, we're bound to keep a clean sheet, aren't we? So I'm going to go for 2-0 to Wrexham.
Reese?
I was going to go for a win, but it's all a bit too positive for me. So I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw.
Do what you think's going to happen. Not just don't react to what we do. If we put our hand in a fire, would you not put your hand in it? I don't know where I'm going with that analogy.
Your hand in an inferno.
I believe in the universe and it works in mysterious ways. So I'm going to say 1-1.
And finally, Andy?
I'd say a 4-3 win with a last-minute diving header from Ben Foster.
Yeah, fair enough. He's been up front, though, in a Stuart Pearce style move. And it's actually Mark Howard in goal.
No. Okay.
Great.
Come on, Connie.
Thank you, Andrew, for joining us. Really interesting. We'll definitely have you back on later on in the season, I'm sure, when the film gets announced. Thank you all for listening. As ever, get in contact with us on the various social media channels, YouTube, Twitter, X, as it is now, Instagram, those kinds of things. You can buy us a coffee if you want to fund Andrew's alcoholism. But yeah, speak to you next week. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
See you.